Hey guys, just browsing the front page of the Donald here, and for anyone who's not familiar with the Donald is a subreddit of Reddit.com, and Reddit.com is the fourth largest, or at least most visited, most popular website in America, just behind, I think, Google, Facebook, and YouTube. So Reddit is a very large, very influential website. So on the Donald, one of the threads that caught my attention was this one over here. This thread is a screen cap of Fox Business News. The story appears to be that Elizabeth Warren pays her male staffers significantly more than her female staffers, and this constitutes a huge hypocrisy because she commented a few years ago, or at least in the past, that the national pay gap is a national embarrassment. So the national pay gap is, I think, only 20% or so, and the pay gap on her own staff is 10% wider than the national pay gap. So if she calls the national wage gap a national embarrassment, then what does that say about her office? So that appears to be what the story is trying to convey. And you have some comments down here. First top comment is just making a joke about the gender identification and how there's only two of them in the story. Because this is a joke about the recent controversy about all the different gender identifications in America. The second top comment, so it's trying to make a joke about how she was talking about the wage gap because she's the one who helped perpetuate or create the wage gap. So you have the projective left strikes again, which is, I guess, a criticism that when the left makes a criticism of the right, that they're just protecting themselves. And you have a comment about reptilians. Okay. Right. Yeah, so something to constitute a bit of hypocrisy. The problem here is, so I was curious about the context of the national embarrassment quote. I wanted to know what the conversation was about before she called it a national embarrassment, and what kind of prescription she had for this problem, and if I agree with the prescription or the solution being proposed or not. Just curious. And when I was searching Elizabeth Warren pay gap, the top article here directly contradicted what I just finished reading about here. So this is pretty weird stuff, because these two articles directly contradict each other. I mean, this article is just saying in no uncertain terms that she doesn't have a pay gap on her staff. So now I understand that there's might be some criticisms, especially from users on the Donald. There might be some criticisms of HuffPost as a source, because some of the past articles might not be truthful and might be misleading. And I think that is a valid criticism if you can, when you point out those articles and those instances. However, I think that when it comes to media, there really isn't an unbiased source, and I'm not really aware of any mainstream source that covers a wide range of topics and news, that has a perfect track record of being truthful or accurate. When you look at sources like Fox News or Breitbart's on the right and the sources on the left, I mean, all these sources have reported things that were at the very best misleading. All these sources have cherry-picked data to push a agenda or to push some kind of narrative. So yeah, so my point is, so how do we approach this problem where we almost don't even want to, or at least for me, I almost, like when you see how dishonest a lot of the media sources are and how misleading it is and how easy it would be to be misled if I just read from a single source, it makes me almost not want to read these stories or confront these stories. So how do we solve this problem? I think my solution, or I think the solution, is to just try to read different sources and try to dig into the primary source that the articles are based on, even though that's extremely time-consuming. If you had to do that for every topic, because I mean, geez, a lot, articles are, sometimes based on reports, studies that are just, dozens of pages or hundreds of pages long, where in the case of the healthcare bills, articles based on the healthcare bill, the ACA, or the recent Republican healthcare bill. I mean, you're talking about a lot of pages. I mean, just you could spend a year studying those and maybe still not fully understand it. And if you're depending on that method to reach the truth, then you just don't have enough time in your life to really get to the truth on more than a handful of complex topics. So I would say that's a very, unfortunately, it's a very impractical approach. And for most of us who don't have time to do that, and who depend on news sources to give us the cliff notes and hopefully not try and mislead us, we have to look for a different solution. And the solution is to just, I guess, try and be a critical thinker and to read articles and news critically, because if you don't do this, then it's just way too easy for a single source to manipulate you. And as we can see here, Fox Business News and Huffington Post directly contradict one another, and so at least one audience of these two sources is being misled, or maybe even being lied to, and at least one of the narrative being pushed is untrue, or at least misleading. So this is a real problem if you consume news from these two sources. So let's try and figure out who's being misleading here. Now, Huffington Post here is refuting the Fox News narrative, Fox Business News narrative, by pointing out that the analysis that this story is based on is incomplete and to the point of being misleading. And the analysis is incomplete because if you're trying to say that Elizabeth Warren is a hypocrite because she pays male staffers more than female staffers? Well, one of the questions we have to ask is this a consistent problem? Because in any business or in any office staff, there's turnover. Employees are hired, they are let go, or they leave on their own. And this is something that pretty much any business deals with. Any business that employs more than one person or two people. So what does this mean? It means that there's going to be year-to-year variations. And if you're coming at the payroll with the perspective of trying to analyze the potential wage gap between men and women, then it could potentially be misleading to take a snapshot of this pay gap during one period in time because of this turnover problem. Because let's say, two of the highest paying staffers on Senator Warren's staff are men, and this year both of them leave. So suddenly this stat we have here of men being paid more reverses, and because the two highest paying staff left, the median salary drops down to $45,000. And then suddenly the news story there would be that she's creating a pay gap against men. So that's one of the problems with that story, is because it could easily be misleading. It would be like someone trying to say that Boston is always, that Boston is a very hot place to live, because it takes the temperature reading of a single day in Boston during the middle of the summer, and it takes that temperature reading, puts it into a graphic, and then presents it to us as, oh, Boston is this hot. It's a very hot place to live. So the problem is there's cyclical variations in the temperature of Boston, and you can't just take a snapshot and then use that as proof that Boston is like that year-round. So yeah, anyway, going back to this article, this paragraph highlights this problem by pointing to data in 2012 where women were actually paid a little bit more than men. And if you took the snapshot back in 2012 and try to create a story out of it, you might say, oh, she's discriminating against men. So the next criticism of the analysis that this story is based on is that it only uses the salary of people that worked the entire year. So let's say someone was hired in the middle of the year, or were hired a month into the year and worked 11 months out of 12. Well, that person's salary would be left off the analysis. And if someone left, let's say, in December, that person's salary would also be left off. And this actually had a real impact on the analysis because the highest paying staffer, Mindy Myers, was excluded from the analysis because she didn't work the full year. And you can see down here, two more female staffers were left out. And they both earned significantly more than the median salary here. So presumably if they didn't leave, and the staff stayed the same otherwise, this would push up the median salary of the women staffers. I think the rebuttal article from Huffington Post is convincing, but the title is also misleading here because there was no, conclusive or concrete proof that if you add these salaries back onto the analysis, so if you don't exclude the salaries of Mindy Myers, there's no analysis that shows that there wouldn't still be a huge wage gap. So maybe there's 10 female staffers and they all had exactly $52,750 annual salary, and even if you add those higher salaries onto the women staffers, it still wouldn't change the median salary. Maybe that could be the case. So this article would be misleading because it draws a conclusion that Elizabeth Warren doesn't pay women less than men. There's nothing here that shows that to be the case. And I would say that the Fox Business News article, where the story is also misleading because of the cherry picking of data during the analysis. Both sources are pretty misleading, and when I look at the comments down here, the comments that only look at the source that presents this bias side of the story, you have a lot of people who I feel like would be just misled into creating a false view of Elizabeth Warren. You have a lot of people saying that she's she's discriminating against women. She's perpetuating this wage gap. She's unfairly implying that she's unfairly paying her female staffers less than her male staffer because she is discriminating against women. And you also have broader conclusions being drawn that the they argument, they being liberals, they being the left, they being anyone who's not part of us. You have this broader conclusion being drawn that, when someone brings up institutional sexism and racism, it's really their problem. It's really, they're the ones who are doing it, and they're just scapegoating us, whoever us is. You have people who are drawing this conclusion from a misleading analysis of data. And I think that's a real problem in the dialogue of American politics today, because it just seems like the two sides, or sometimes more than two sides, it just seems like everyone's talking past each other because they're arguing from sources that are misleading, that are, I would say, intentionally misleading, that cherry-pick data, that they're just coming from different places and they're arguing about different things, debating about different things, and they're just talking past each other. And so when you only read one side of the biased equation, when you only read one of the sources, you only internalize the bias of this one source. And that forces you to draw incomplete or just wrong conclusions. And it allows you to easily create straw mans to accuse the other side of having positions that they actually don't hold, to accuse the other side of committing actions that they have not committed, such as intentionally paying women less or discriminating against women in the case of Elizabeth Warren. And it just really creates all kinds of misunderstanding and confusion in political discourse, and it prevents us from reaching the truth from even establishing basic facts. It just, it just makes us say, oh, look at, this side. They're not, they're doing something bad, they're doing something wrong when they may not be. So, yeah, sorry, I'm reaching a point where I'm just, kind of rambling a little bit. But so you see what happens here. So you have these misleading stories. They distort the data. They only take the part of the data that supports their argument, and then they present it to you as if this is a complete argument. And so you see some of the things being said over here. I mean, oh geez, you have people calling her evil heart. I don't know, man. I mean, like, this is creating some real hate. I mean, I think that if you were someone who read the original Fox News story or saw the story on TV and were led to believe certain things about Elizabeth Warren, I hope that after watching this video you might feel at least a little bit betrayed or a little bit misled, at least about this one specific issue, because what you see right here being painted as her hypocrisy comes from data that leaves out the highest paying salaries of the women on her staff. So, trying to bring a little bit of perspective onto this topic, and I obviously don't have all the whole picture either. I don't know what she pays all of her staff. I wish someone would do a proper analysis. Incorporate the salaries that were left off and see if there's still this significant wage gap, or if there is or there isn't. I wish someone would do this analysis. And if you are watching this and you disagree with something that I've said, or conclusions I've drawn, or you can refute some of the things being brought up here, then feel free to leave that in the comments, and I will update this story in this video with what you've brought up. So yeah, that's about it.